So before we read from page 91, which is Navadvip and Youth Pastimes, in the chapter called Lord Chaitanya Liberates the Crocodile, which is chant of short Mangalacharya. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshushamalitamyena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Upam Karoti Vachalam Pangolam Gaite Girim Yaskripatamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinatarinam Paramanand Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhaktivinoda. So Lord Chaitanya liberates the crocodile. Adding a couple more people to the room. Hare Krishna, we're starting on page 91. Hare Krishna, we're starting on page 91. So Jagadananda Pandit, in his book Prem Vivarta, tells how once Lord Chaitanya and his Sankirtan party were doing kirtan when the Lord was approached by one cowherd boy named Gopal. The boy said, "You are my brother, my cousin brother." To which the Lord replied, "How am I your cousin brother? Because Lord Chaitanya was a Brahmin and the cowherd boy was a Vaishya." "Well, your mother Sachi calls my mother as a younger sister. Therefore we are brothers. My mother is inviting you to please come and take some milk sweets." Lord Chaitanya replied, "All right, then why not?" So just pause here before we go to the next part of the story. So a few points are made here which I could maybe pick up for discussion. First of all, there are many biographies of Lord Chaitanya. I believe there's 7 or perhaps 8, maybe even more, that I've heard of. So Prema Vivarta is one of these biographies of Lord Chaitanya. So this pastime is taken from that biography. Of course, there were different people around Chaitanya Mahaprabhu during different stages of his life. So this Prem Vivarta is like his youth pastimes, or you can say like his teenager kind of pastimes. Yeah. And that's written by a devotee named Jagadananda Pandit. He's going to be described in more detail later on. So we'll leave it as that for now. But he's telling about a cowherd boy who claimed to be the cousin brother of Lord Chaitanya. Cowherd boy, as we know from when we read Krishna book, means he's a Vaishya. And we know Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or Nimai Pandit as he's known, is a Brahmin. Yeah, because he's a Pandit, he's a teacher. Yeah. So I think we're all aware of the difference between the Brahmin and the Vaishya, is that right? Yeah? Yeah, okay. So let's continue then. And of course, if you have any questions, just feel free to jump in. If you want to add comments also. So Lord Chaitanya took his kirtan party to see the boy's mother. And on the way, they stopped and saw a lake. In the lake, there were some cows making so much noise. Lord Chaitanya asked, "Why are they making this noise?" Gopal replied, "There was a crocodile in the lake, and they don't know whether it is safe to drink the water or not, whether the crocodile will jump on them and eat them." Lord Chaitanya told his kirtan party to start the kirtan, and then gradually the crocodile began to rise to the surface. It started to swim for the kirtan. Then it climbed up the bank and ran towards Lord Chaitanya, touched his lotus feet, and immediately transformed into a divine celestial child. It was amazing. "What happened?" Lord Chaitanya asked. "Who are you?" The divine child said, "I am a resident of Indraloka." And in that world, I am 5 years old. Once I was playing in the forest and I saw a rishi, sage, who was sleeping. I was a naughty boy and I cut off his hair, but I didn't know that the rishi was Durvasha Muni. When he woke up, he noticed his hair was cut and said, I curse that whoever has cut my hair will become a crocodile because they like to cut things. I have heard this curse, and I told him, I am sorry, I didn't mean it. I was just a playful kid. I didn't know. I didn't want to be a crocodile. Please, take back your curse. Durvas Muni replied, No, I cannot take back my curse. But since you are a child, I'll give you a way out. You will be a crocodile until Kali Yuga, when Lord Chaitanya comes. If you touch his lotus feet, you will be freed from the curse. I've been waiting here for yugas to tell you. I've been waiting here for yugas for you to come. Finally, you came. I caught your lotus feet and was liberated from this curse. He circumambulated the Lord 4 times, and meanwhile, his parents came from Indraloka. His whole time on earth had just been like 1 year on Indraloka. His parents started to chastise him. You naughty boy, why are you giving us trouble? Come back home. They took him back in an airplane, and he was able to have the darshan of Lord Chaitanya. Okay, so pause here. This is like entering a story within a story. For those of you who just joined, we just finished reading page 91 and at the bottom of page 92 now. So there's like a story within this story. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has been asked to go to the house of Gopal, and on the way he sees a lake with a crocodile that's disturbing the cows. Yeah. Has anyone heard this story before, by the way? Just curious. No? Okay. I'm wondering if you, Malini Nitai Mataji, have heard this story before.
Sort of, but yeah. I mean, I read the book, so.
Okay. So for those who have been on the Navadvip Mandal Parikrama around, of course, Navadvip, which is the island surrounding Mayapur, this place is actually available to go and visit. From memory, it's a place called Amgat. I may be mistaken, or maybe near there. I remember going on this Navadvip Parikram sometimes, and they've shown us like there was actually a lake here, this one place, and they tell you the story of the crocodile, just as we've heard it. So it's amazing that these miracles which have happened, this miracle has happened, that this crocodile has turned into a divine child, a celestial child, yeah, and gone back to the Indraloka after being freed from a curse by Lord Chaitanya. So it's amazing that you can still go and visit these places where Lord Chaitanya has performed his pastimes. Not just this place, but so many of the places which are in this book are available to go and visit. It's really incredible. And of course, these pastimes are always going on there. Even if we can't see them, they're all eternal pastimes. They're just not manifested in front of us. So we can still go there, and all the devotees, they go there and they roll around in the dirt. Because now it's like a forest, a mango forest. There's a forest of mango trees. And because Lord Chaitanya has delivered this crocodile there, you can also get the same mercy by connecting with the dust where his lotus feet walk, because this crocodile touched his lotus feet and got that mercy. So all the devotees, they have like really wild kirtans, and everyone's like jumping on the floor and diving and rolling around and touching each other's feet, and everybody's jumping when someone touches their feet. It's really crazy fun. So just some memories which come back to me when I read this story again. So he was cursed by Durvasa Muni. Does anyone know about Durvasa Muni?
Yeah, I've heard his name, the angry sage. He's always angry. I've never heard a story about the Rasamuni where he's not angry.
That's right. That would be his caption, huh? The angry sage. If he had a caption.
Middle name.
Yeah. So Durvasa Muni, he appears in many scriptures, in many Puranas, in many histories, the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, and so on, many places, and even in the Gaur Leela, as we see here. So he's a very prominent personality, very powerful personality, of course. Yeah. And I've heard, or at least I've read in Prabhupada's books, that Durvasa Muni is a partial incarnation of Lord Shiva. Just like Dattatreya, he's a partial incarnation of Vishnu. Similarly, Durvasa Muni, he is a partial incarnation of Lord Shiva. So that's where he gets that anger, or that Rudra, the Rudra potency, you know. So he's very, very powerful personality. And there was a third one who was the partial incarnation of Brahma. I can't remember who that personality was though. So there were these three sages, very powerful. I think they're all the sons of Atri, if I'm not mistaken. I may be wrong. At least Dattatreya is the son of Atri.
Sorry, can I say something?
Hare Krishna. Yes.
Yeah. I just want to say, I just remember a few things, and the Rasa Muni, yes, he was son of Atri Muni, and I think there was a pastime that Brahma and Shiva had a heated argument, and Shiva was so angry and creating lots of chaos, and then he concentrated that anger and deposited into Anasuya. So she gave birth to Durvasa, which means one who is difficult to live with. So
Right.
because he was born out of Shiva's anger,
Yeah.
he had a very irritable nature and easy to get angry, and that's why we have lots of curses throughout the history of Puranas. I think, but on the other hand, it shows different natures and creates different pastimes. So I think there is a purpose to all of it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, where would we hear all these other with so many pastimes if he was not present, huh? Definitely has a role to play in the leelas of the Lord. Okay, so in this pastime, he's cursed a crocodile, a child to become a crocodile, and then given him an escape route through the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya. Okay. So now he goes back to his abode in the heavenly planets, and Lord Chaitanya, he reaches, we're going to read on how he reaches the home of this cowherd boy now, okay? So finally, Lord Chaitanya met this lady who was accepted as the younger sister of his mother, and she gave him rasgulla, sandesh, barfi, etc., all varieties of milk sweets. Once Swarup Damodar told Jagat Ananda Pandit, "You cannot write all these things. These are all confidential leelas." Jaganananda Pandit replied, "Listen, this is my book. I can write whatever I want to. I am writing what happened. It is all true. If you don't like it, write your own book. But I am going to write whatever I write." Because Jaganananda Pandit was Satyabhama, reincarnated to join Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan Leelas, some of these pastimes we don't read anywhere else. They are only in Prem Vivarta. Okay. So here's a little bit more about the Prema Vivarta, which we started discussing. So it's interesting, huh? How these things are very confidential in these biographies, and they're available as well to through the mercy of the devotees. They become available, these pastimes. So Shachi Mata, she apparently has a sister who is married to a Vaishya, it seems, and therefore Lord Chaitanya has gone to the house of his auntie to get all these nice milk sweets. Yeah, this is the substance of the story. Of course, if there's any questions and comments, do share from what we've just read. I've seen a few more devotees join, so I just want to welcome. We've had Dinesh Prabhu and Jigna and Shambhala. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So if you just joined late, then we're in the middle of page 93 now. I trust you all got a copy of Gauranga book, yes?
Yes.
Okay. So there's two more personalities mentioned now. So one is Swarup Damodar and one is Jagat Ananda Pandit. Okay. So who's Swarup Damodar, first of all? His name is mentioned first. Does anybody know who Swarup Damodar is?
Was he like the secretary of Lord Chaitanya?
That's right. Yes, Swarup Damodar is the secretary of Lord Chaitanya. That was after he took sannyas. So at the age of 24, Lord Chaitanya took sannyas, and he remained. His main base was Jagannath Puri, and that's where Swarup Damodar's role in the pastime became more prominent. So of course, somehow Swarup Damodar and Jagannath Pandit had met also at a later point in time, when Jagannath Pandit was writing all these pastimes. Yeah, and this was the discussion they had. It sounds like a rather heated discussion, hey? About whether all these pastimes should be told or not. So Swarup Damodar, he was especially an expert in understanding the mood of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He could understand just exactly how to bring out the best environment for Lord Chaitanya to experience devotional ecstasies. Yeah, the best devotional environment for Lord Chaitanya to perform his pastimes. So Swarup Damodar was very expert at that as his secretary. Yeah. And so now Jaganananda Pandit, his role is given here. Actually, does anyone know what's Jaganananda Pandit's role in relation to Lord Chaitanya? It's mentioned who he was in Krishna Lila, but before we get to that, does anyone know? So Jaganananda Pandit, he was also a Pandit, as it says here. So he's also a Brahmin. He was actually a very dear friend, like a school friend of Lord Chaitanya. Yeah. Just like Gadadhar Pandit was also a very dear friend, like a childhood friend from young age. So was Jaganananda Pandit. I don't know if later on in the book there's other pastimes given by Jaganananda Pandit or not. But there are some other prominent pastimes which he had with Lord Chaitanya. I think one of them is going to be coming in the next section. So we'll wait for that one without telling it now. Just checking. Okay, so it says how his role was in Krishna's Leela. Did anyone catch that? Who was Jaganananda Pandit in Krishna Leela?
Satyabhama.
Right, yeah. And who is Satyabhama? Does anyone know?
Krishna's wife.
Yeah, that's right, Krishna's wife. So Krishna's, because Krishna had 8 principal wives, and then he had another 16,100 wives as well. He had 8. Krishna is known to have 8 principal wives, just like Krishna has 8 principal gopis, and he also had so many more gopis than that. So obviously, being Krishna's wife, he was Satyabhama was in the Dwarka pastimes with Krishna. Okay, and you get a glimpse here. What was her temperament like, or what was her nature like? Nature of Satyabhama. So,
someone who wanted to talk about the glories of Krishna. I mean, glorify him and glorify what he can do.
yeah, you find that with all the devotees of Krishna, they'll all like to glorify him in different ways. But there was something about her her mood, her personality, her nature, which is also coming through in the life of Jagannananda Pandit as well. Satyabhama was known as quite a fiery queen. Yeah. There's a famous story of quite a few famous stories with Satyabhama. One of the maybe more prominent ones is the Parijata flower, the story of Krishna collecting the Parijata flower. Does anybody know about that story? The Parijata flower is a very fragrant flower which grows in Indra's palaces in Indraloka. It's interesting because this pastime also has some connections with Indraloka. But there's a flower there which the fragrance of this flower, it radiates for miles and miles. Yeah. So it's not like an earthly flower, it's like a heavenly flower. And the fragrance is very beautiful and actually goes for miles. You can smell it from so far away. So it's actually very rare to have even a tree of this which is growing this kind of flower, as Indradev had. He had such a tree. Yeah. And that made his whole like kingdom was fragrant with this one flower, from this one tree. So Krishna, he collected this. He managed to get this flower for his wife, and then the co-wives, they became jealous because it was in one of the wives' palace, and then the other wives, they wanted to have the tree in their palace. You know? So this is where the role of Satyabhama, being very like competitive in nature, she wanted the Parijata flower in her palace. So Krishna had to make extra efforts to get to steal a Parijata flower, or to steal the whole tree. And this offended Indra greatly, and so then the whole pastime unfolded from there. Yeah. So that's one just a summary of that pastime. Does anyone else remember some of the details of this pastime? I can't quite remember it well. There's other pastimes as well with Satyabhama. Satyabhama is actually the daughter of Satyajit, and Krishna has another very famous pastime in Dwarka with Satyajit, which is the Shamantaka jewel. Has anyone heard of this story? No? Okay, the Shamantaka jewel is quite an epic story, where this personality, Satyajit, he's a devotee of the sun god, and the sun god gives him a jewel from which he can, by worshipping the jewel, he could make everything turn into gold. Anything he touches, or he would get like tons of gold every day by worshipping this jewel, right? And so he goes to show off to Krishna that he's got this jewel, and Krishna says, give the jewel to Ugrasena, my grandfather, who's the king of Dwarka. And Satyajit declines. And it's a long story, but eventually the jewel gets lost, and there's a big conspiracy about what's going to happen. And it involves many of the devotees of Dwarka. And ultimately, Krishna has to go and save that. He has to recover that Shamantaka jewel. And on the way, he meets Jambavan, who is an associate from the Ramayana, his old associate from the Ramayana. And he acquires the Shamantaka jewel from him, as well as his daughter. So Krishna also marries Jambavan's daughter, Jambavati. And then when he regains the Shamantaka jewel and gives it back to Satyajit, Satyajit offers his daughter to Krishna as well in marriage, and that is Satyabhama. Okay. So in this pastime, Krishna gets 2 wives after Rukmini. So this is another pastime. So next story in the Gauranga book is Devananda Pandit becomes a devotee of the Lord. So I think we'll be able to cover that in the next 20 minutes or so. Panchali, would you like to read next? I can see you've volunteered kindly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hare Krishna. So Devananda Pandit becomes a devotee of the Lord. There was one Pandit named Devananda Pandit who would give class on the Bhagavatam in Koladvip, on the other side of the river from Mayapur. He would give his Bhagavatam class like a Mayavadi. Everything would have an impersonal conclusion. Naturally, people in his class weren't very ecstatic, all Pandits and students. One day, when he gave the Bhagavatam class, Srivasa Pandit came and sat in the back. When he heard the Bhagavatam, he became so ecstatic to hear the Krishna Leela that he started crying in ecstasy. He fainted. Devananda Pandit said, "What is this devotee doing? What is this person doing? He is creating a disturbance in my class. Throw him out." So he was taken over by the students and thrown down on the street. This was considered a great offense.
Okay, just pause there for a moment. So this is a very different kind of scene now, involving Srivas Thakur, or Srivas Pandit as he's known. So who is Srivas Pandit? I'm sure many of us have heard of Srivas Pandit before.
He's one of the Panchatattvas, isn't he?
That's right. He's one of the features of the Panchatattva. He's one of the personalities. Okay. And what is he known for? What's significant about his role in the Panchatattva, in the pastimes of the Lord?
He represents the devotees.
Yeah, he's the leader of all the devotees. Yeah. Yeah, that's why we say Srivas Adi Gaura Bhaktivedanta. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? We've read some of the pastimes about Srivas Thakur already. Yeah? Does anyone remember what we've covered?
He's an incarnation of Narad Muni.
Yeah, that's also true. He's an incarnation of Narad Muni. So Narad Muni, as we all know, his whole purpose, his whole being is all about just chanting the names of God, isn't it? Yeah. Everybody knows the famous song Narad Muni Bajai Vina Radhika Ramananam. Yeah. And he's always chanting Narayan on his Veena. So yeah, and in pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, he comes as a grihasta, not as a brahmachari. And he has the same mood again, because his house is like the birthplace of the Harinam Sankirtan movement. Yeah, because that's the first place that Lord Chaitanya went to perform kirtans. with a group of devotees. Yeah. Anything else you can remember about Srivas Thakur? Anyone? Okay, so in this pastime, another personality is introduced, Devananda Pandit. Yeah. So is Devananda Pandit a devotee, or is he not a devotee?
I wouldn't say.
Sorry, on mute, Panchali.
Because he was teaching about Srimad Bhagavatam in a very impersonal way. So a Lord's devotee can never think of the Lord as impersonal.
Yeah. So you cut out a bit. So do you think he's a devotee or he's not a devotee? No, he's not. Yeah. That's what I understood as well. So although he was giving class on the Srimad Bhagavatam, he himself wasn't a devotee. So it's quite instructive, because we should only hear scriptures, especially devotional scriptures, from devotees, isn't it? So that's an interesting point. I remember hearing in one class just recently, and I'd never heard this before, that Srivas Pandit actually knew he wasn't a devotee. He actually knew that Devananda Pandit was a Mayavadi, and he still went to the Bhagavatam class because he wanted to teach us this lesson, which we're going to learn soon. Because it's important for us as devotees not to go, not to hear, not to learn from non-devotees, especially when it comes to spiritual matters. Yeah. So this is actually a pastime which is enacted so that we can learn the dangers of associating with the Mayavadis for spiritual benefit or spiritual progress. So what happened? Who can recall what we've read? And Srivas Pandit showed up and sat in the class.
So he heard about Krishna, and he was overwhelmed with emotion, and started crying. And that displeased Devananda Pandit, because obviously he didn't like it, and he asked his other students to throw Srivas Pandit out of the class.
Yeah. That's quite shocking, isn't it? I was quite shocked when I read that.
Yeah.
He threw him out of the class. Like he was genuinely feeling like such devotion for Krishna that he was crying. Yeah.
But it's more shocking about Devananda Pandit's reaction, because you would have thought that okay, you can ridicule a person for crying, you can question a person for crying, but to actually throw somebody outside only because they were crying for Krishna, that just goes against the whole meaning of devotee. That just goes against the whole. I mean, there's no point in him teaching Bhagavatam when he can't even tolerate any emotion towards the person who's Bhagavatam in itself.
Yeah. It's shocking, isn't it? Yeah. You can see actually how far away he is from the message of the Bhagavatam. Do we ever hear in the Bhagavatam about devotees and their love for Krishna and their crying and their separation, or their, overcome with emotions?
Yeah.
Is this like an alien concept in the Bhagavatam, or is it like something that we hear about, read about?
It's not an alien concept.
No, not at all.
No.
So many of the pastimes, there are devotees crying, like they get some mercy from Krishna and they're ecstatic, they're overwhelmed. Yeah. There's so many examples. Like Dhruva Maharaj, when he was touched by the was the conch of the conch, isn't it? He was touched by the conch, the Lord's conch. And then he just became really overwhelmed. He became ecstatic. Yeah. And then he just started speaking all these wonderful prayers in praise of the Lord. And who else is there who goes through so many emotions? Of course, we know in the Krishna Leelas it happens more often, but all through the Bhagavatam, doesn't it? Yeah. The one I was thinking of was who's the one who associates with the four Kumaras? Is it let's get my mind now. Prithu Maharaj, isn't it? Prithu Maharaj, and he listens to the Bhagavatam from the four Kumaras who have just heard it from Lord Sankarshan, yeah, Anantasesh. So they've heard the Bhagavatam directly from, effectively it's like Lord Balaram, Anantasesh, and then they've come to I think it was Prithu Maharaj. I get mixed up with Prithu Maharaj and Priyavrata Maharaj. I think it was Prithu Maharaj, and then he hears the Bhagavatam, and he's crying, and he's in ecstasy hearing the Bhagavatam, and he's like worshipping the four Kumaras with the tears falling from his face, from his eyes, So how can you give class on the Bhagavatam without knowing all these things? How can you be reading these things and then seeing it in front of you, someone doing that in front of you, and then kicking them out? You could do that if it's someone who's like just faking it, right? That's a different story, of course. He's saying, what is this devotee doing? Why is there a devotee in the Bhagavatam class? As if devotees are not supposed to go to the Bhagavatam class. They should go somewhere else. That was his thinking, right? So who gets punished for this? We'll find out. Because Devananda Pandit, he's like the guru of all these students. So it's kind of, is it on his head or is it on the head of the students who have thrown Srivas Thakur out? Because there's going to be some offenses and some sinful reactions here, potentially. Should we read on?
Yeah. When Lord Chaitanya saw Devananda Pandit on the road, he chastised him, saying, "What kind of person are you? You don't know the slightest meaning of Bhagavatam, and you are giving a Bhagavatam class? You are very offensive. A real devotee went to your class and in ecstasy, he fell down. You don't know how to tell when someone is in love for Krishna? What do you know about Bhagavatam reading? You are simply a dry scholar, dry as a fig. You have offended Srivas Thakur. You have offended a pure devotee. And you are the lowest of all the so-called pious men." Like this, he publicly chastised him. He said so many things to Devananda Pandit, he got very upset. Devananda Pandit was a little older, and he was very offended, thinking, "How dare this Nimai Pandit speak against me like this?"
Okay. So now the next part of the scene. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has been chastising him out in front of his his classroom or his school, and all the students are watching, isn't it? So this is the thing, like, how do you tell when someone is genuinely like experiencing Krishna Prem and they're just crying and their hairs are standing on end, they're shivering, and how do you tell if someone's just faking it?
Yeah.
So we should as it says here, we should be able to tell. I remember going to Mayapur and being on parikrama, and I remember when we were doing the Harinam from one place to another, we'd be walking past some of these very not remote, but some of these kind of very rural kind of villages, very, very simple living. Literally, you get to see the thatched huts, all the stuff which you read about in the stories only, and you really get to see that. and people living there, and they come out of their homes when the Harinam is going on. And I remember at certain points, there would be people who came out of their homes and they just fell down on the ground and they just started rolling on the ground, you know, in the dust of where like the devotees had walked or they were coming up to, you know. At least in my case, I couldn't tell, you know, were they really having devotional symptoms or were they, you know, I think they were just honoring. They were just, to me, it felt like they were, you know, they were respectful and they were honoring the devotees, you know. They were very cultured and they knew, obviously, the glories of the Harinam and, you know, the dust of the feet of the Vaishnavas. They appreciated that. But I don't know, I couldn't really say that they were having ecstatic symptoms, you know. So it's hard. We have to be very careful, at least for myself. I feel like I have to be very careful. You don't know who is in the class and who is listening and if they're experiencing some ecstasy and how to deal with it carefully, isn't it? Anyone else have any thoughts about this? You're all very ecstatic devotees.
I think, is it one of the signs of going up the ladder in bhakti? One of the signs is when you get tears coming into your eyes when you're thinking of Krishna. And I can't remember. I mean, there are 3 stages, and I forget, but I think yeah. So, but that is when it comes automatically, not forcefully or not with glycerin.
Yeah. Yeah, there are many symptoms. Yeah. The Ashtashatvika Bhava, which means there are 8 symptoms of bhav or like devotion. I'm not very qualified. I won't speak about those. But you're right. Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena, that tears, there should be tears in the eyes. Lord Brahma says that as well in the Brahma Samhita. Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. In those prayers, he says that we should have Premanjana. Our tears should have instead of an ointment like, you know, mascara or a kajal, what the ladies put on the eyes. He said for devotees, the eyes are supposed to be decorated with tears. Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena. It should be eyes which are decorated with the tears of devotion. So this is like this is Brahma's standard of devotion. The eyes are not wet, then they're not much devotion. And the Bhagavatam also says similar statements. If one doesn't, if one's heart doesn't melt when he reads the Bhagavatam or she reads the Bhagavatam, then the heart is to be understood like a steel frame cage, you know. This kind of statements, a stone-like heart. So it's a real thing, you know, to actually get to those platforms of devotional service where we can experience that and enter into the beauty of bhakti, of Krishna consciousness. And so Lord Chaitanya, he also says a similar thing. He doesn't need to Devananda Pandit. He says, you are simply a dry scholar, dry as a fig. Yeah. Yeah. And he's actually feeling offended that the Lord's commented on him like this, you know. So so much darkness he's in. So let's continue reading.
Ego, isn't there?
Hmm?
I mean, there's also ego in Devananda.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got that ego that I'm like a senior scholar, yeah, and you're a junior, you know. All right, I think we're coming up to time, so let's try and continue a little bit more on this.
But Devananda Pandit was fortunate that he was somehow related to Vakreshwara Pandit, and Vakreshwara told him, listen, Lord Chaitanya is actually Krishna himself. You have been blessed by him. He has talked to you directly. He criticized you directly. Take it as a blessing. You are actually blessed because Lord Chaitanya has spoken to you. You should understand that it was predicted that the Supreme Lord would come in a devotee form in the Kali Yuga and give out love of Krishna freely to everyone. Because Vakreshvara Pandit started to engage him in devotional service and started preaching to him, even though he was an offender, Devananda Pandit started to think, I have offended a devotee. Actually, I'm supposed to be feeling ecstasy when I'm reading Bhagavatam, but I'm experiencing nothing. I'm reading in a wrong way. I should learn from these Krishna conscious devotees, from these followers of Lord Chaitanya, about the real method of studying the Bhagavatam. Then they started to study the Shastra and found out who Lord Chaitanya actually was. And Devananda Pandit realized it was true that Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Lord himself. So he approached Lord Chaitanya, offered his obeisances, and begged for forgiveness. But Lord Chaitanya said, you didn't offend me, you offended Srivasa. You should approach Srivasa and ask for forgiveness.
Okay. So before we move on to the last section, you can just pick up a few of the key points here. What was interesting to me in this section was how when Lord Chaitanya told him all these things, he couldn't accept it. You know, Krishna himself is telling, just like Krishna told the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, Arjuna accepted it. Yeah. But it wasn't just Arjuna who heard the Bhagavad Gita. It was everybody on the Kurukshetra battlefield that heard the Bhagavad Gita. Yeah. But Arjuna fully accepted it. So here, same thing, like Devananda Pandit, he heard it straight from God. Straight from God that you're an offender of Srivas Thakur. But he felt offended that the Lord was telling him this. But when his own relative told him, you know, it doesn't say how he's exactly related to Vakreshwar Pandit. But when Vakreshwar Pandit told him, then he took it to, like, you know, in confidence, he took it as, you know, a lesson for himself. So he was kind of more in that bodily concept of life, that someone who's telling me, who's my relative, I should listen to him. So fortunate for him, his relative was a devotee. Vakreshwar Pandit was a devotee. And he took that instruction to heart, isn't it? He changed his attitude. So it really was a blessing for him, this pastime. It was a blessing for Devananda Pandit. It was a blessing that Srivas Thakur came to his class. It was a blessing that he met Lord Chaitanya. It was a blessing that he had a devotee in his family. Yeah. So, as I say, count your blessings. You never know when the next one's going to change your life.
I mean, how lucky were these people to actually be be present in the same time as God himself? I mean, that's a concept I can't even think of. I mean, how incredibly lucky they were.
Yeah. So these are all great souls. Yeah. These are all great personalities, actually, because nobody can come into contact with Krishna, as it said, Krita Krita Punya, unless you've done so many pious activities. You cannot come into contact with Krishna. And they play these roles in the pastimes, yeah? Whether it's favorable or unfavorable, you know, whether you're King Kamsa or you're Queen Kunti, it doesn't matter, you know, wherever you may be. But all these people had such extraordinary fortune. You're right. And even now, like, you know, these are considered, even now in ISKCON, it's considered the extended pastimes of the Sankirtan movement. It's still the same Sankirtan movement with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. inaugurated it, which he started, it's still the same Sankirtan movement, it's still the same mercy. We just have to have that vision, isn't it? We just need to remind each other that it's still the same benefit there for us for chanting and reading the Bhagavatam. So yeah. So now he actually begs Lord Chaitanya for forgiveness, isn't it? So what's also interesting here is that that even if you offend someone else, if you offend someone, then you have to go to that person to get forgiveness. You can't get forgiveness from the Lord. Even the Lord can't forgive you. Even the Lord, even God himself doesn't have the power to forgive you if you've offended someone else, especially his devotee. Yeah. So this is a running theme in the Bhagavatam as well, isn't it? Can you think of any prominent pastimes where that happens?
There are so many Ambarish.
Yeah.
And even in the Lord Chaitanya's pastime, Jagai Madhai and then Nityanand Prabhu.
Yeah, that's another one. Yeah, in the Chaitanya Bhagavat. Yeah, I think that is in. Yeah, I thought of the Durvas Muni and Maharaj Ambarish as well, because that Chakra was going after him, and was going after Durvas Muni, right? And he had to get forgiveness from Ambarish Maharaj himself, rather than from anyone else. Yeah. Just seeing if anyone has any comments or questions from what we've read so far. Lots of devotees are not visible to our eyes or ears. So let's just complete the pastime with these last few paragraphs then.
Then he saw Srivasa once in Navadvipa in Kalyagrama, which is present-day Navadvip town, and he fell down at his feet and prayed, "Please forgive me for my offense to you." After that, Srivasa and other devotees trained him in pure devotional service, and he actually became qualified to read Bhagavatam. He became an ecstatic devotee. After that, the devotees would go to his class. Even today, that is known as Aparad Bhakta Bhanjamera Pada Kalyagrama, the place even the offense to a pure Vaishnava is forgiven. This is the special mercy of Lord Chaitanya. You cannot approach the Bhagavatam as material, even in a spiritual scholastic way. You have to simply approach it through the parampara, through the method of authorized devotional service without any offense. Then you can constantly taste the nectar. Devananda Pandit started dancing like a little child when he got the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. He was also dancing in the Sankirtana. People couldn't believe it. Here was such a very great person dancing like a child. When you get ecstatic, you don't care what people think anymore. You only care what Krishna thinks. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Thanks for reading.
Oh, thank you.
Just to complete this pastime, now there's a very great mercy to be had, because after Srivas Thakur accepted the apology of Devananda Pandit, that place where Devananda Pandit resided became a place where everyone can be forgiven, even for Vaishnava Aparad, which we discussed in some detail last session, didn't we? The elephant offense, the elephant in the garden offense. Remember that? We discussed that? Yeah. So there is such an extraordinary place as Aparad Bhanjana Pad, yeah, in the modern day town of Navadvip. You can actually go to that place and you see there's again a lot of devotees rolling on the ground there too, and taking the dust on their head and begging for forgiveness from the Kalpa Vriksha trees, which fulfill all desires. which are present there. So, of course, we shouldn't take that as a, you know, a free ticket to make offenses, right? Because if we try and cheat Krishna, of course, Krishna can try and cheat. He can cheat us back. Yeah. I don't think that we should take that as a free ticket to make offenses, but we can generally go to such places and, you know, beg for mercy, beg for forgiveness. And the other important thing, I guess, is in this section is the importance of learning devotional service through the disciplic line of parampara. And you can see how transformed Devananda Pandit has been by learning through that parampara, by learning through the proper way of the spiritual masters. And he actually transformed from being this very scholastic kind of Pandit to a dancing devotee. Yeah. And he couldn't care less what people were thinking about him at that point. He wasn't trying to, you know, hold a profile or something, you know. So he was just merry and dancing like a child, you know, and just feeling so much love for Krishna at the end of this pastime. So lovely reading with you all again. I'll just pause the recording. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. His Holiness Jayapataka Maharaj ki jai.
Jai.